I'm really honored to introduce our Annenberg Visiting Professor of Leader and Management, Carol Bartz. So Carol is currently the lead director at Cisco, and she's the former CEO of Yahoo and of Autodesk. And I first got to know about her, and I remember reading multiple magazine articles about her when she was the CEO of Autodesk, and she was sort of my hero. Heroine, maybe. And then we could be heroes. And, you know, one of the things that really impressed me about Carol is she actually has a technical background. There are quite a few women who end up in leadership positions at tech companies who come up through business or marketing or something else. She has an undergraduate degree, an honors degree in computer science from the University of Wisconsin, which is really one of the top computer science departments. She also has, not surprisingly, several honorary degrees, including from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and Williams Woods University. So the thing I want to say about Carol, and you know, as I already told you, we already bonded, and we have the, I think, the privilege and also the challenge of having been the first woman serving in many of our roles. And there are lots of wonderful things about that, but there are lots of challenges as well. And I have to say, when I look at female CEOs in the tech industry, Carol has an incredible reputation as being incredibly gutsy, very forthright in terms of her communications about things. And I feel just really honored to be welcoming her here this evening as our second Annenberg lecturer. And she's going to talk for a while, but then for her, the most important part is the Q&A session. So save up those questions. And I can tell you she's going to give you really honest answers, and you're going to learn a lot from this evening. Thank you.
So, you know, when I was asked to do this, I'll be honest, my first question was, and what is Harvey Mudd? Well, it's kind of an odd name. And I have to tell you, all I had to do is sit this morning through those presentations, and I was blown away. I was totally blown away by the quality of the work the students had done, undergrad students. I haven't seen graduate students do that kind of work. Totally blown away by the presentation skills and the teamwork. So I left saying, before I went to meet with Madame President and the other faculty, this is a really interesting place. And when I heard about the core curriculum, I would do well here, except I hated that physics stuff. I never could understand why you had to roll something down the slant and figure it out. It was just stupid. With all apologies to physics, I just want to know that gravity works. That's all I need. And I can't, you know, whatever. But I looked at the environment. I grew up in a town of 1,000 people, so I know what 800 is like. I went to a school my first 2 years of 1,000 students, so I know what 800's like. And this place is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And so you've got to get a better PR team. This is just an incredible, incredible college. So I'm extremely delighted to be here tonight. You know, when faced with the situation of talking to both students and faculty and other various adults, whether it's trustees or parents or whatever, it's very hard to find a common ground because you all came from a different place, a different time, you're interested in different things. So I was thinking a lot about this. I taught a leadership, or lectured at a leadership course today, and really had a great time with the students. And again, you're sitting there saying, I mean, my first management job was 34 years ago. That was twice ago when they were born. and trying to figure out how do I actually mind meld with seniors, juniors, and seniors on, you know, this is what happens in leadership, this is what we're going to do. So, but I had a great time. And I would also tell you that there was not one bit of shyness in that student group, which I also think is great. They weren't there just clocking in. They were there participating. And so my kudos to both the students that are here, parents that are here, and the faculty that are here. This is incredible. So what I decided to do tonight, I was actually thinking back over my career and thinking about how the whole process of leadership and communication has evolved, and then doing a rapid race towards what's actually happening today. And so, you know, in Silicon Valley we talk about Web 2.0, so we talk about what's happening with all of the social collaboration and what that means to leadership. So I actually had a great time sitting back and thinking. My first job was 3M in St. Paul. Well, actually, my first job was a bank in St. Paul, selling computer services to North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Minnesota, in white go-go boots and hair to my waist. It was quite thrilling for them, but we'll pass that one by. Yeah, oh yeah, oh my God. The only good news is I could always tell my customers were, because in the town of 200, it was the building that was made of brick. Everything else was about ready to blow over. My first management job was when I moved to digital equipment, for those of you, DEC, however you might know it, in Atlanta, and I became a manager, and I was promoted from within my own unit, which is hard because everybody thinks they should get the job, so it's hard enough being a first-line manager without the one that you were all peers with. But that's not what's important. What I was thinking about then is our whole communication was by personal interaction and memos, internal memos. That was it. And then to get big thoughts out, you had national meetings, everybody into Nashville or whatever, speeches for 3 days, and then everybody would go back out for the next year. Never again to communicate, except your little unit. That was all we had. That was sort of when word processing was starting, but there was no PostScript, so you couldn't make pretty documents. There was nothing. I mean, that's all you did. Little typewriter, period. And by the time I moved from Atlanta to Boston, DEC was one of the early users of the ARPANET, and so it was Unix, and so we had email. So we'd email in the late 80s. But, you know, it's like having a fax machine if nobody else has one. It's like I remember my grandmother she raised me, she died at 98. She was always the first person in the little town of Elma to get something, but then nobody else had it, and they didn't know what it was, so they couldn't even be impressed. She got the first blender, she didn't know what to do with that, then she got oh my God. Anyway, so we'd email, but it wasn't considered a management tool. It wasn't considered an active tool. It was only a tool for people to send a lot of long documents around that nobody read. So you never said, come to the meeting at 3 o'clock, because not everybody had email, so you couldn't do that. So you used the same old tools, and voicemail was starting to creep in, but not really. And you still had the same concept of big meetings, and that's all you did. Okay. I decided I was a computer science major, and I had to go to the mecca of technology, Silicon Valley. So I moved from DEC out to Silicon Valley, worked for Sun. There were 100 people there, 9 million in revenues. And voila, they also had email, because they were also part of the DARPA Unix rush. But again, nobody else had them, so not much you could do with all that. However, inside the company, we started at least communicating, but we still had the old, in fact, I have to tell you a story. Sun, because it was part of the university community, and Unix and so forth, we got a lot of calls. We had this great big long table, and we would put the telexes. Telex? That's a quiz? You know what a telex is? No. Okay. We'd put the telexes and the pink phone messages by time zone. Singapore time zone, all around the world time zones. And we'd figure out when they'd wake up, and we'd start telexing back or calling. That was communication. And because these people actually found out about us, wanted to buy, and so that was the whole way we operated. No personal devices. Desktop devices, if you call a big hunkin' workstation a desktop device. Nothing was easy to use. And so it was the same old thing. Big meetings, speeches, and that was kind of it. So move on in 92, CEO of Autodesk. Now they allowed PCs, because couldn't have PCs at Sun because workstations were supposed to kill PCs. Notice how well that worked. But we all had PCs, but we all had to be on the same PC and the same desktop image. And for the first time, I could actually communicate to everybody in the world by sending a message to all world. I could sit and send a message, everybody would get it. It was like, wow. The problem is, so couldn't everybody else. So we got a lot of, I want to sell my scooter, you know, and so who wants it? And the guy in Italy is saying, what does this mean? And so that was wonderful. But we also had, for the first time, turns out Autodesk was the biggest, our customers were the biggest user of something called CompuServe. For those of you who might remember CompuServe, kind of this dial-up, whatever. However, we had a problem. For the first time, customers could talk to each other. So we lost control. So if you had a bug, they found it. And then they tell each other before we found it. And then we were in this whole policy thing about, well, who should monitor CompuServe and who gets to answer? So we had big, strict rules. You know, Johnny over there gets to answer, so on, and it all worked. But we still had this problem that news was getting out that we weren't controlling. And in fact, then the terrible thing is the shareholders got on CompuServe. So they'd be asking me questions about why is bug 5462 not, you know, and I'm like, so that was an interesting time till 97, 98, 99, and the internet really broke loose. We, unfortunately, were an engineering software company who believed engineers never had to use the internet because they needed preciseness, control, security, all those things. Another bad concept. But with that, we started actually changing our whole process and deciding how could we and our customers be part of this big world. So by the late 90s now, certain people got cell phones, certain people got BlackBerries, first-time personal devices. Everything had to be authorized 6 levels up, why you get a cell phone, why you get a BlackBerry, who are you, why you're so important. Still a very controlled environment. And that went forward into the 2000s when finally we started giving a lot of people these devices. We started doing more messaging. The interesting thing that happened is groups started forming on their own. So those people selling mechanical software would get together with other people selling mechanical software on a mechanical software interest group and talk about how to service customers better. That was the first time we actually saw what you guys would think of as a social network or groups or anything. And that was so, again, very, very strange. A little hard for management because we never quite were sure what they were talking about. But that's still when you had the feeling of a little control. So now fast forward, 2009, I went to Yahoo. Oh my God. The last 2 years has been an explosion. And the explosion goes like this. Everybody has a video camera, it's on their phone. Everybody sits in any meeting and tweets whatever they want. Within 3 minutes and 6 seconds, that's actually the closest, that's the smallest time, my internal memos are out to the press. 3 minutes, 6 seconds. And I don't care what security, what you do, everybody thinks it's a free environment. Everybody has any device they want. We don't care if you have Android devices, Apple device, everybody has anything they want. They do anything they want with it. And control is totally now in the hands of the masses. Now what it does is it drives management to not say so much. I mean, I used to sit in front of my executives in my company and say, we have these 4 problems. We got to fix this, da, 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 da. Do you think I say that now? Oh my God. The minute I say it's in the New York Times. So now, with all of these tools, communication goes backwards. The other thing that happens is, because there's so much video, first of all, it's good to communicate, all that's good, because now I can do a video to 14,000 employees. But the problem with video is it stops you in any motion. So now there are pictures out there that make you look angry, crying, sad. I mean, it's just, the press can do anything they want with the stop motion, with the video thing. So, to give you an example of how interesting it's gotten, in the same period of time, by the way, blogging has come up, social networking has come up, Facebook, Pinterest, you can go on and on and on. And so everybody now believes that if you go out with a blog and you can legitimately have half a brain writing, which I hear you all take a 7-week writing class, so I'm sure you could all do that, it's considered truth. So to give you an example, 2 days ago, there's a blog called All Things D, and it's All Things Digital. It's actually the online version of the Wall Street Journal. Somebody wrote some opinions on this blog, and within the next 48 hours, Reuters, Forbes, Fortune, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, AP, Business Wire, I don't know who else pick it up, change the title just a little bit, same story, and now, guess what? You'd read it and say, it's true. Because you're reading Fortune, Forbes, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. You're not reading a blog, but they pick up the message of the blog. They attribute it. That part's fine, but you don't know what they're attributing it to. They change the story a little bit because they want to get clicks. I mean, the way this all works, if you're part of a newspaper and you're part of the writing staff, you depend on newspaper sales. If you're part of a writing staff of an online blog or online communication, they know precisely who's clicked on your story and therefore how good you are. So the more sensational you make the headline, so somebody will click on it to see what it is, even though it's the same trash everybody else has, you're considered a good writer. And so all these stories go out, same story, more fascinating headlines by the moment, no fact checking. In fact, you call a Fortune, Forbes, whatever, they say, we don't have time to fact check. We can't do that anymore. So then you start, companies start trying to have a Facebook account for good reason, because you want everybody to like you. And what's happened now is our life as management is totally stripped out there in the world. It would be like, think about this for a minute. Your neighborhood. You're sitting at a family dinner and somebody's sitting there tweeting everything you guys are saying, including your little arguments, or including this or that, to all the neighbors and all your relatives, just exposing you. I don't know if you saw a few weeks back, but this, and I don't condone shooting a PC, but this man, his daughter went up on Facebook and said, what a bad daddy he was and whatever. And he's in the IT field, so he knows how to get into her Facebook account. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. So it went viral on YouTube. He videoed himself. He put her laptop on the ground and shot it 9 times. I mean, just shot it. And now I don't know that that's actually good parenting. But the fact of the matter is, he was frustrated because his business was put on the street. And so I guess what I'm saying to all of us, we really are in an interesting new time. And every one of these sort of periods I talked about are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And what I would say to those of you still in business, keep up with what's happening. Do you know, everybody know what Angry Birds is? You need to. If you're in business, I guarantee your employees are playing Angry Birds. Do you know what Pinterest is? I guarantee your employees do. In fact, companies like General Electric have a Pinterest site. That's where you can actually pin photos of things you like. GE has a Pinterest site talking about their history. So their employees can go up and be proud of their history. Now, I'm not sure how many employees are going to do that, but the point of the matter is companies are taking advantage of all these social tools. And if you're going to be running a company, working at a company, you have to be where your customers are. And that's what your customers are doing. So now they have full access to anything they want to talk about. Your employees have full access. We have something at Yahoo called Devel Random. What it means is anybody in development, actually anybody, but it's the developers, can have random thoughts. Well, for those of you who know software engineers, they have wild random thoughts. And they will just, piss and moan about everything. And so at any given time, they're stirring each other up. And so again, back home at management, you're trying to control all of this at one time. Your investors are seeing all this. Your analysts are seeing all of this. Your customers are seeing all of this. And you just have to have this priority of how you're going to manage all this information flow. So it's only going to get more interesting. It's not going to be less. You can't sit in Silicon Valley and tell people you can't use technology. That's just insane. People have said to me, well, why don't you block devices from coming into the meeting? Oh yeah, that's going to work. Or, more importantly, we video them, and somebody can sit somewhere in their desk and do whatever they want. Before I got there, they actually tried to radio block the building, frequency block the building. That's cute. That doesn't work. We tried to put several different copies of internal memos out to see if we could catch these people. That's kind of sleazy. So, I mean, you can actually do some amazing things. But then, so then I started threatening. That didn't work. So I finally just lived with it. But all of again, if you're students, you're in the middle of this, you have to learn to respect. Everybody goes back and says to the student, don't put stuff on Facebook you don't want to see again. We all know that. But companies, families, everybody that touches a keyboard, touchpad, watch what you're doing there because it's everywhere. And let me tell you, everything is everywhere. There's no such thing as you can wipe it away. It's all there. At Yahoo, to give you an example of the kind of data we process, every day we publish 18 billion ads. 18 billion ads. 18 billion. We run 500 million emails a month, 6 times that in spam. So 15 billion spams a month, 500 million real emails. We cut most of it out, but you still see some. You can't even believe it. Hackers come in every day. China, Russia, kids. So there's actually a lot of work that goes on. But more and more, again, as things go in the cloud, as personal devices get more ubiquitous, everything you do, everything you shop for, every game you play is there. So be diligent. And if you work for companies, be very diligent, because some companies aren't as open and fearless as some of the Silicon Valley companies. In fact, I just read today one company cut out Facebook and I think Foursquare. So they're tracking employees who use it. But I have a final thing I want to read you. Actually, it turns out Monday in the Wall Street Journal, there was a whole section on leadership in the technology world. And now, I talked about some of the tough stuff, but you've got to listen to this one. This is called the 24/7 boss. Did you read that? Let me offer a simple example. A few years ago, a hard-charging executive digitally intimidated his global workforce by firing off emails at all hours of the day and night. Detailed queries and requests for immediate action would pop up in managerial mailboxes at midnight, 2 to 2:30 a.m., and just before dawn. If no response materialized within 12 hours, a follow-up email invariably appeared. He never appeared to sleep. His secret? He had programmed his computer to randomly send out his end-of-day email queues between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m., while he was sound asleep. The emails were tagged to generate a stern reminder if the recipient hadn't replied. The simple software deception reinforced his reputation as relentlessly omnipresent. His people tried to work as tirelessly as they thought he did. So that's an abuse of technology. So it's now a world where, not quite as simple as I described, where you communicate everything in a meeting and everybody can interchange, but all of these tools are out there, and frankly, they're coming on even faster. So I just wanted to kind of give you my idea of some of the things happening and some of the things facing you and your kids and your grandchildren and all of us who are in the public eye. It's a very interesting time. Questions on anything? There's a lot of fake Carol Bartzes on Twitter. There are, I mean, what do we call Facebook every week, Judy? And then there's the one that say fake Carol Bartz, and you ought to see what they write. It's very, very illuminating. The only social media that I'm on now is Pinterest. Because frankly, anybody that wants to get me knows how to get me. I mean, seriously. When I left Yahoo, I had press parked at the gate. It's really, if you want to find anybody, you can find them. I don't know how hard you tried, but it's not that hard.
So you kind of stay away from social media?
I stay away. I know what it is. I know about all these products. I don't really want to read my daughter's accounts, although they're now pretty well trained to keep it pretty simple. And honestly, I don't want to find out about the guy I dated when I was 16. And everybody else that I want to communicate with, I communicate with. So I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter. I can't say anything in 140 characters. I think you probably figured that out. But I know our companies are on there. I know exactly what's happening from an advertising standpoint. So I look at it all the time. I just don't have my own account. What else? Yeah.
So what was your goal when you were graduating college? Like, did you envision yourself in the role that you've kind of gotten to, or did you have some other image for yourself?
The biggest image I had for myself was paying off my college loans. In fact, somebody today asked me in the management class why I went into management, and I said because I thought they paid more, and then loved it. No, again, to be cute, I never had that male-dominant gene that said I had to run something. But when I got the chance, I went, ooh, this is kind of fun. I get to make my own rules. And I get to not work with crummy people anymore. I said something else. I said something else, but But there were two epiphanies in my life. One is how much I like technology, and the second is how much I really like to manage. Really like the interaction of people. I like complex organizations. I like complex problems. I like to get to know people and help them be better. And so it was, I'm so lucky. Yeah.
Much of what you just said is the expansion of activity, people using social media and computers. I come from a generation that read 1984, so I'm worried about the other side of it. I'm worried about the China syndrome or the Russian syndrome, where government can perhaps know all that's going on and develop a software that can control it and identify who's saying what when. Do you see that as a real danger, or do you see that the technology, and I speak from total ignorance because I'm not a technocrat at all, that's just something people don't need to be worried about because it's just uncontrollable? Or is that a real danger in the future?
Well, first of all, to give you an example, Yahoo gets 50,000 subpoenas a year from law enforcement for information. Now, most of them we refuse because we have ground to stand on. Judy will tell you, as my assistant for 13 years, and especially the last few years, we always had this policy that my line was always open to anybody. After 2 weeks at Yahoo, we had to shut that down. You cannot believe what you get. Oh my God. Everything, I can't even, that's a whole nother speech, I can't even tell you. What I would tell you is something Scott McNeely, so I'm going to actually quote him. There is no privacy, so get over it. There is none. Basically, with a...
It's not so much the privacy, it's the control of it. To be able to pinpoint that person said something that was disruptive and we're going to get them.
I would tell you any MUD CS person could do that for you. That's worth half a degree. Which, I guess what I'm saying is, everybody has to be careful.
So is that a real danger?
I think so. But it's, it's interesting. When I wasn't at Yahoo when Google started, I was at Autodesk, but I took one look at that and said, oh my God, they have everything you ever are interested in and more. And at the time, it's why isn't the government seeing that? Now, people have to work a little bit for it, and they have to have a reason to want it. But
It's there.
oh, it's totally there. I mean, the easiest thing now, by the way, is law enforcement is all over Facebook. That's how they're catching these people. Now, that's good. But what if one of your children did something perfectly innocent? Well, we had an example. This poor doctor called us. Family practitioner had, 6, 7 kids. One of his boys used the family computer, which was also the business computer, and went on porn sites. When somebody goes on porn sites, we shut them down. Now, let me tell you what the porn sites do. We do a sweep of all Yahoo accounts multiple times a day at various times. The porn sites figure out, shut themselves down, and pop back up as soon as we sweep through. These are sophisticated people. However, this poor doctor's kid went on a porn site. We caught him, shut it down. The doctor's now lost all of his practice information. Now, the rule is, you go on a porn site, it's tough. We're done. You're done. We're done with you. This poor man convinced Judy, who is from New Jersey, it's not easily convincible, that this was true. So, being the CEO, sometimes you get to do things. I turned him back on and sent Judy flowers, and the rest is history. But equally interesting, this woman called in from North Carolina someplace. You have a female CEO, and doesn't she know there's this porn site going on, blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm incensed anyway, but, you know. So we go to shut it down. She comes back the next day. It's back up. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. So I go storming in, Bigfoot down the hall to my general console. It was an FBI sting site. Now, I can't tell this poor woman that. She thinks I'm a creep. And life just goes on. So, yeah.
So, you've spoken a lot about the dangers of social media,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also a lot of people that feel that social media can be leverage, that one can manage one's public appearance, that one can actually send messages, that one can network with. So
Absolutely. No, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I think social media is great for companies because you can, listen, we used to, with Thanksgiving to bake a turkey, we used to have a hotline we'd call. Now you can go right up on Facebook and find out what to do with your turkey. I mean, isn't that good? Maybe. But no, social media is a great way to communicate. It is a great way to interact with people. It's a great way to get interesting information. In the early, when was chess, Judy? In the early 90s? I mean, I worked with the University of Wisconsin to put PCs in rural Wisconsin in the homes of women with breast cancer so that they could have groups. They could talk to each other, they could talk to their doctors, they could, get advice, they could get support, all of that sort of stuff. Now it's so very antiquated. I mean, there's a dial-up, AOL, whatever. Now that can come together naturally in a Facebook and any kind of social media. There's some very, very important things that happen.
Well, if you put the genie back in the bottle, would you?
I don't answer questions that are relevant. Can't happen. It just can't happen. I think some people would manage things differently. The thing that always scared me is my youngest daughter would show me the sites of my friends' daughters. Oh my God. Oh my God. And the dilemma was, do I call my friends and say, oh my God? Or do I just lecture my daughter not to do that? But it's tricky. There's just things you don't want to know. Yeah.
So I may not have the numbers quite correct, but I believe it was something on the order of about a third of all apps that are used for iPads now have it that some places like China that they're pulling data personal data from individuals and using that for whatever reasons they want to have. Is there anything that we're doing that you know of that's combating that, or how should individuals deal with that?
Yeah, they can pull your whole address book out.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, because of the way apps work, some of them do it on purpose and some of them do it by mistake, but it doesn't take much to crack that. And so I'll tell you a freaky thing that just happened to me. And, I'm a little savvy, but on my iPad, now that's not a corporate iPad with security, it's my own personal, I had all kinds of things under my name, pins and all that stuff that I can't remember for 5 seconds. So Judy and I got clever. So clever are we? Judy got clever and decided we'd put it under my dead grandma's name, Alice Schwartz. So I would know where to look for it, but anybody finding my iPad could figure out it was me, but couldn't figure out how to get any of my information. Do you know within 24 hours I was getting mail to Alice Schwartz? Wow. 24 hours. When my dead grandmother's name showed up in place of me, I freaked. So.
Well, we were talking about the problems with privacy and security and the sort of things we were talking about. About 10 years ago, I was working for a U.S. Navy R&D facility in Corona. And of course, they have lots more security concerns and trouble enforcing them and so forth. combination just to get in the building, but the convenience factor was that then you could leave classified material out on your desk when you went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You didn't have to pop it back in the safe. And we had a lady who was in charge of security, and she would go around kind of checking, and had this little briefcase, and she could go into these buildings, of course. If she saw one of the cell phones that had camera capabilities left out on the desk carelessly, she reached into her bag, pulled out a hammer, and smashed it on the spot.
That was good.
None of these things had, been confiscated and everything else. And I thought, well, that's a pragmatic solution to it, but how it was really a challenge. We weren't allowed to bring the cell phone into the building at all, actually. We were supposed to leave it in the car. And there was an intermediate time when you could receive calls, but you couldn't generate calls. And I imagine you must have had some.
Well,
complications.
there's an actually interesting problem right now because companies can remotely get rid of all the data on a cell phone or BlackBerry. Like so, I'm an employee, I lost my BlackBerry. Obviously, it has corporate information on it. So you can remotely zing it, except you remotely zing their photos, their file, everything. So now there's this whole thing about, are you kind of allowed to do that? Well, yes, because it's our property. But then you say to the employees, keep your personal stuff personal. But we don't enforce that because there really isn't a way to enforce that. Listen, you can play, you have the technology to play heavy hand. I mean, we watched, when this whole China thing went on a few years ago, we watched them run around our network. We watched them come into my email. I mean, we tracked them, trying to figure out what they were after. And so very much sophisticated tools. But you spend all your time doing that and none of your time doing your business. And we're a smart business. I mean, small businesses don't stand a chance. And medium businesses don't stand a chance because they just don't have the ability to keep all that out. Yeah?
Two things. First, I saw a thing that said that a hacker tested Android and he tested iPod, and he said iPod you could actually erase it, but the Android he couldn't figure out any way to completely erase it. All the data was extractable. My other comment is I read that Facebook hasn't really gotten to its full potential, and that so Google just knows everything you personally have done, but Facebook has all this networking, and so there's a whole another level of mining that hasn't been done yet.
They have the data. All they have to do is
Yeah.
mine it.
And the question is, are you guys projecting what that will mean? I mean, when that level is exploited.
Well, listen, one of the things we have at any given instance, like if you're on the Yahoo front page, there's like 6,000, 8,000 versions of the front page because we know what you like. We know that you like basketball and recipes and whatever.
I've noticed that.
And so we know what you like. And so, because we followed what you seem interested in. And therefore, the whole idea is to give that to you because then you're most likely to engage.
But you don't see what I do on Google or.
You can. But by the way, we don't know who you are. Let's be honest. We don't know who you are. We don't know your name, address. We know your computer footprint. So we know your online footprint.
But you know what I've done on Yahoo, not what I've done on
No,
Google.
you can know what you do other places. Yeah.
So I read an interview we had with USA Today a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
and you had mentioned, they asked about Facebook, and I think the word you was creepy,
Mhm.
which you alluded to.
Mhm.
Now, I guess I'm wondering, partly since you've started with that big competitor, so since you're no longer there, and since the IPO recently, I don't know.
Not yet. Going to be out.
They're announced,
Mhm,
they're
mhm,
announced
mhm.
the IPO, and they're $100 billion
Mhm.
valuation. I guess I'm wondering if you think that number is completely ridiculous, and I guess your thoughts on what that number means, sort of relative to what you've been talking about
Listen, I've gone through many IPOs in the Valley. I was on Sun's IPO roadshow. So I've personally been involved in IPOs, and I've run young companies who had IPOs. In fact, there was this company called VA Linux was the biggest one-day rise in any IPO ever. I was on their board. It went from 10 to 341 in one day, and I didn't sell. Anyway, I couldn't. Error. Listen, 100 million it's like big puppy feet to grow into. But they have a lot of customers, and they have a lot of potential, and buyer beware on anything. And so I never really question what the companies are doing, as long as they're ethical, as long as they post their financials correctly and whatever. The public has to learn. So, but back to what they know, the difference between what Facebook knows and everybody else knows is they know your real name. And they know your real address, and they know all your real everything, which is what the rest of us don't know. Now, with deals through Facebook, you can get it, but that's what they have that is both more precious and more dangerous. Yeah.
So you sort of skirted around this in like several of the topics we've talked about with Google and Yahoo. What do you think is the place of analytics in the next 10 years?
Oh, analytics is managing data and analytics. If you were going to start a company, do it there. It is the golden egg right now, because people have way too much data and way too little information.
And that's going to flip.
Yeah, that's going to flip. So the whole idea of managing big data, if I was in the VC business now, that's what I'd be doing.
A little while ago, you were talking about the idea of.
Could I get a Diet Coke from anybody? Thank you. Okay, go on.
Companies that get into your progress book and so forth. Do you anticipate getting a backlash, or is this going to be a trend that will continue? Applications that will share.
You know what's interesting? Yahoo is one of the first companies that did an opt-out, that did a explain to you what we were collecting and why we were doing it, and you could either designate what your interests were yourself, almost like Flipboard and that sort of thing, or opt out. Do you know that 0.006 opted out? People talk about this, but they like the benefit. They like the benefit. I mean, when I'm on Amazon, I like certain genres of books. I just like them to tell me more about those books. And so I consider that a plus. Now, the downside for anybody like in academia is we're going to dumb ourselves down till we only see information that somebody thinks we should see. Like there's this whole thing on top 10 lists. If you just, all you do is read top 10 lists, what if number 11 is more interesting to you? So people are doing the funneling for us. So it's good, but is it going to stop us from discovering something that's interesting? So people opt, frankly, mostly for the benefit.
Okay, I think I'm doing one more question until a Diet Coke arrives.
Wait, I got somebody.
One more period.
One more period.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody just starting out in software or management?
Somebody that's just starting out, and this is what I said to the students all day. Look around the room. Anybody that looks slightly old to you, which is probably everybody. You have to work 50 years to support us.
Because we're getting old and you're young.
We're old. We're going to run our Social Security. You got to pay. So, 50 years. Think about that. You got a lot of time to make a lot of mistakes, have a lot of fun, try different things. So don't be so frantic to be perfect right away. Every job you have is not going to be the greatest job. Every manager is not going to be the greatest manager. Every idea, stop and have kids. everybody in this room is smart. We should have smart kids. So have kids, enjoy your relationships, enjoy your friends. Work hard sometimes, not so hard the next time, because you got a long time to do it. And it's so easy to just be so anxious. If you have college bills to pay off, get a management job. No, just kidding.
Okay, join me. So I just want to say a couple of words about students. The reason we do this is we know that we have amazing students and faculty and staff, but they don't have a day-to-day opportunity to interact with some of the leaders in the world. And so the whole goal of the Annenberg series is you get that possibility. And I just want to ask you to applaud once more. Carol has spent an entire day with us. And she's been incredibly amazing. And, you know, we're just very lucky to have people like this who are willing to come and spend a day with us. And I'm particularly happy to have students from other colleges, alumni, parents, faculty, staff, students from our own college. And so one last huge thank you